I've always wanted to make a really big tree, and now with the help of dioramapresepe.com I've been able to. It's a surprisingly straightforward process, but it can be quite fiddly and time consuming. But I just stuck on an audiobook and powered on through. So after we've finished enjoying these lovely pictures, we'll crack on with it. The main structure of the tree was made using thyme twigs sent to me by dioramapresepe.com. And there's no great secret technique used here, I just shaped and cut them as I saw fit. And then I just arranged them in the positions I felt looked right and stuck them together with Superglue, and then used some Activator spray to speed up the drying process. This makes a world of difference. I just carried on adding pieces until I was happy with the tree, knowing that I would blend these pieces in later with a bit of modelling compound. And now there really isn't much to add for a bit, so I'm going to stop talking and let you watch me build this tree. Okay, I'm back. So now the basic tree structure had been made, it was time to remove the fluffy ends, as I call them, from the thyme twigs. Quite a messy process, make sure you've got your hoover handy. Plasticoat were kind enough to send me quite a few cans of this hydro water-based primer. This is a light grey colour which I find perfect for undercoating the tree, ready for washes. And now I've talked previously about how difficult it's been to obtain sculptor mould during lockdown. I tried making my own with moderate success, but now I've started using Geek Gaming's compound, which I find to be every bit as good as sculptor mould. If anything, it goes off a little bit quicker than sculptor mould, but that was okay for this project. And as with sculptor mould, the more water you add, the more time it takes to go off. But since I wanted a fairly thick paste so I could fill in all of these gaps, I didn't add too much water at all. I was just careful here not to eliminate all of the wood texture. But to be honest, the thyme twigs didn't offer the best texture for this scale anyway. The baseboard for this piece was a scrap of a sheet of extruded polystyrene, which I cut to shape using the Hotwire Foam Factory's sculpting tool. They've been very generous in supporting me down the years, and I've found their foam cutting tools to be second to none. Fixing the tree to the base was simply a case of using more of the Geek Gaming compound, placing the tree in it, sculpting the compound around the base of the tree to fit the contours, and then just holding it in place while it dried. And I used yet more of the compound to sculpt the landform around the base of the tree. In the main, the paint job of this tree was achieved using homemade black wash. This is the same stuff you can get in some of my diorama kits available from my website hiiworkshop.co.uk. However, I needed the branches to be slightly darker than the trunk, so I used some Rust-Oleum brown spray paint. This is a matte finish, and I just sprayed it very lightly over the branches, blending them into the trunk from a distance so that I didn't overwhelm the paint job achieved by the wash. Around the base of the tree, I employed the use of the incredibly powerful Diorama Presepe static grass applicator. I mean, this thing can handle 12mm static grass as if it's 2mm static grass, but for this piece I'd only be using 6mm through the sieve attachment and over basing glue by WWS. The first layer of ground cover though was some rough ground texture by Diorama Presepe, and I didn't bother applying scenic glue over the top of this, I just stuck it down with enough basing glue. And once this had dried, I applied yet more basing glue ready for the static grass, which, as I said, was applied through the sieve attachment. Now this does lower the performance slightly of the box, but not very noticeably, as you can see by those giant flashes of electricity there passing between the earthing clip and the basket. So just be aware that this piece of machinery is super powered and you will have to be very careful. And once the basing glue had dried, I sealed the static grass in place with a bit of Plasticoat clear sealer. And then it was on to the foliage, for which I used Diorama Presepe's teloxis bloom. As you can see, this natural material has an incredibly realistic spread of branches and leaves, which make it perfect for a tree like this. Now I'd say I spent a good 3 afternoons, upwards of 10 hours or so, applying all of these bits of foliage to this tree. The thing is, if you apply it in big clumps, then you don't get a realistic looking spread. So it's well worth taking your time, snipping off individual bits and sticking them on individually using Superglue and Superglue Activator. There were times, of course, when I considered it necessary or appropriate to add clumps of this foliage into the tree, but that was really only because I was getting really frustrated with how long it was taking. But, you know, I always arrested that temptation and came back to the individual pieces stuck on individually. In fact, I used so much Superglue Activator on this piece that I ended up running out and having to make my own. This is a fairly easy process. It's just half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda mixed into a quarter cup of water, and anyone asking what a quarter cup is in millilitres, I've no idea. I'm from the UK, I just happen to have these lying around. Anyway, this mixture just gets put into a spray pump bottle and then applied exactly the same way as you would apply any other Superglue Activator, and at the end of 3 long afternoons this is what I was left with. But I wasn't finished there, oh no. Now it was time to add moss and lichen to the trunk, and for this I used some Vallejo moss and lichen paint, which I applied in a kind of pointillist way. And kind of knocking it back with the other end of my brush. And I blended this into a more realistic kind of look with some watered down verdigris paint. This was also from Vallejo. And then with a final application of my homemade black wash. And those 3 in combination produced just about the most realistic bark I could ever have hoped to create. So there's my giant oak tree. I do hope you enjoyed watching me bringing it to life. And if you did, please do remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel. It really does make a difference. I'd like to thank once again Diorama Presepe for supporting me, sponsoring me materials and making this video possible. And I'd also like to thank all of my Patreon supporters and everyone who's bought a diorama kit from my website. I'm bringing out new kits periodically, so do please keep an eye out on hiiworkshop.co.uk. And remember, Patreon supporters do get a discount from those kits. Well, that's it from me for this time, so until next time, cheerio!